Maybe we'll do a comedy podcast one day, but today we are in fact here to talk about mindset, SDR mindset. I'll let people keep trickling in here slowly, but before we kick things off, just wanted to thank everyone for showing up today. It's going to be a pretty casual discussion between myself, Keith, and Sam here, and then for audience participation, we've got Alex. Listen in the background. He's a little pause there. My internet is hiccuping, so I apologize if I pause at inopportune times. It does decide that as soon as I'm going to make a big point, that's a good time to just pause. But as I was saying, Alex is in the background here. He's moderating some stuff on the back end. So if during the presentation you guys have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and he will alert us. He just said hi. Hi, Alex. Let's just jump into it here. I wanted to quickly introduce the topic, and then I'll introduce Keith and Sam, let them say a little bit about themselves, and we'll jump on in. But today we are here to talk about mindset, specifically how to think like a salesperson if you're an SDR. Everyone in sales knows that it takes time and patience to hone your craft, but we see a lot of companies fast tracking SDRs into AEs and making promises that they can't keep or frankly don't intend to keep a lot of the times. And a lot of reps are being sold a bill of goods when it comes to their time frame and pathway for advancement within a company. So a lot of it's on leadership to set those realistic expectations, but a lot of it's also on SDRs to fill in some of those gaps on their own. So we're going to be talking a lot about the mindset that you need to succeed in sales dev. And just if you sit around and wait for that promotion, it's probably never going to happen. So we're going to touch on what is more, how SDRs can adopt the right mindset, growing up and out of the role, and how leadership can build a system where that's possible. So Keith and Sam, two experts on how to do just that. I'll let them introduce themselves and we'll kick the discussion off. So Keith, you're first up on my screen. Let's start with you.
Oh, thank you very much, AJ. Hello, everybody. My name is Keith Compagna. I'm the Chief Sales Officer here at the ROI Shop. I've been in software sales since 2006. I spent most of my career selling HR tech, which gave me the dual pleasure of selling software as a service, but also knowing what's going inside the behaviors of companies of all shapes and sizes in a bunch of different industries. And the human experience is something that, interestingly enough, kind of just fell into my software sales experience. So really supportive of my BDRs, my SDRs, my MDRs over my career, and looking forward to sharing some ideas and learning some ideas as well.
Awesome. Sam, what about you?
Sweet. My name's Samantha Morris. I'm the Director of Sales Operation over at Rhinogram. We're a healthcare communication company. I actually got into the space about 2 years ago as a BDR. I was previously in the restaurant industry for a very long time. I actually applied to my last job thinking it was a POS system, and I learned real quick how to kind of communicate in the healthcare space just to get the job. So I made the quick transition over, and I've kind of been pivoting ever since. Became an SDR manager within 9 months. And now I'm over sales operations at another health tech company. So it's been a really cool journey so far. But yeah.
Awesome. Love to see both of you with obviously plenty of experience in
we're great.
Understanding what the SDR role was like, the challenges with it. So the hiccups keep happening. So let's set the stage. Let's figure out what is going on here and the purpose of the discussion today. SDRs have this idea that they can get ahead of the curve almost and sort of move up in the role faster than ever before, taking that SDR to AE promotion from 18 months down to 12, down to 9 in some cases. So I ask you guys, did reps become too eager? Are they trying to get after things a little bit too quickly, or have companies just not caught up to the pace at which reps are looking to move up in the role? Keith, we'll start with you on this one.
Thanks, AJ. So I think it's a combination of the two. I think if you take a look at the demographics of the majority of SDRs or BDRs, you're going to see recent college grads or people that are trying to get into some sort of a sales organization. I think that kind of energy has been a challenge for organizations in every industry and every department, not just sales. And so I love we don't have any yet here at the ROI Shop, But what I did have is a group of eager men and women when I worked out of California, where they were constantly trying to improve their skill sets as much as the company would allow them to. And at the very same time, they wanted more. So I think the way that reps come into a sales organization is highly dependent on the expectations that the sales organization gives them and their ability, and that sales organization's ability to follow through on the deliverables.
Cool.
Interesting. Yeah, Sam, what's your take?
Yeah, of course. I think that a lot of sales reps actually come in as ex-athletes. Large percentage, I've sat next to them, and I think that they have this mindset of they have their freshman year, then they have the JV squad, then they have their varsity squad. And then when you apply to these jobs, you can look online, there's about 1,000 SDR roles open right now, and you could see it. You're going to get promoted within 6 to 8 months. You're going to be promoted. We have leadership training, 6 to 8 months, 6 to 8 months. They pitch it to you in your onboarding process, and they'll give you the direction of going into AE most of the time, where I've seen a lot of SDRs actually take the role to go to marketing or go into management, or if they become a tech lead because they actually know the product inside and out. I think it's just like having this closed mindset and not opening the road for them when it comes to just applying themselves and seeing how the role actually works. I've also onboarded with a bunch of BDRs where they would sit back and just say, I'm hitting my KPIs. I'm kind of getting close to my demo number. I'm going to get promoted because I'm hitting it. But then the other overachievers would accelerate and they would just sit in that chair for another 6 months and another 6 months. And they're wondering why they're still sitting there. So hopefully we can kind of walk through some guidance to kind of get you guys to be past those B and C players and become A players. So nice.
Yeah, I think that you brought up the sort of the point of the whole webinar here, right? Is that there's a lot of B and C players out there, and there's a lot of SDRs that understand like, hey, I can come into this role and do what you said, sit down, hit my numbers, get close to the KPIs that are set for me, and I'll be good. And then over time, eventually I'll get that promotion that I'm looking for. Looking at it sort of on a seniority level versus maybe a meritocracy level. So like Keith, to what you were alluding to, having the SDRs that come in, get what the company gives them, and then they still want more. They're still hungry to get more out of the resources available to them, to look beyond the company and try to find ways that they can grow within the role. So that the question that I ask is what can SDRs be doing to get themselves ahead of their peers? Are there different things that they can do? Well, there's a hiccup there, I can tell. Are there different things that SDRs can be doing to make sure that they are standing out from their peers and moving at the pace that they're looking for? And then on the flip side, what can sales leadership do to make sure that they're enabling that, not just creating an environment where it's like, hey, if you want to move up, you got to do it on your own?
Right. Sam, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take it. So when I got into the role, I had never sat down in a chair, used Salesforce or any type of sales tool in the entire world. So I had to take the next level and learn Salesforce inside and out. I remember sitting in the class and every person next to me understood Salesforce. I actually have the sales leader who coached me through training, so he could probably give some insight a little later of my first couple of days as a BDR. But I could say that what you have to do is you have to go outside your comfort zone. So they hand you these toolkits in front of you, but a lot of these toolkits have these offerings of having learning centers, or I know Salesforce has Trailblazer, LinkedIn has a plethora of different things that you can do. I recommend you can put for a half hour a week, and you could do a 5-minute video or a 5-minute guide to whatever tools you're currently using. If you use tools like ZoomInfo, I know that they have free programs. You can get awards for it. It's just if you have a toolkit, most likely you can get certified in it. And if you get certified in it, you're going to learn it better than your BDRs. And if you're doing a manager path, I would suggest doing that. And if not, I would reach out to groups like SDR Nation or any SDR groups that have people that can be your mentor throughout the process and kind of find out how you're doing it. And then my other thing, I know AJ loves this, I love shower thoughts. So listening to your calls throughout the day and just making sure that you're using that to your advantage, because you're your best coach. So if you're not listening to your calls or developing your skills and having those objections that you're really having struggles with and using it to your advantage, and at the end of the day, kind of coaching yourself along with your leaders, then you're not going to get to the next level.
Yeah, and I'll take might be a half a step back here and just mention how the reason why we're talking today is because of the mindset, not the functionality of the role. And I love this conversation, and I appreciate being here, because if there's one thing we all know, everyone on this call should know, that the biggest challenge every single sales organization has, and no matter what industry you're at, is to get people interested in you. And we all know that it's really not feature functionality, it's what's in it for them. And we all know that everyone is super busy. And there's a pretty good chance that everyone has got some form of stress behind all of that busyness and all of that work and all of that what's in it for me stuff. And so one of the bigger takeaways I hope the SDRs on this call pay attention to is your level of attention towards what you want and your focus on learning the path to get you there is the fundamental key. That starts with why you're an SDR, why you're a BDR. Are you in it because, like Samantha said, you want to be able to do the time and get the long experience? Are you hungrier than that? Are you doing it for the test run of just being in a job, right? There's at least 1,000 open BDR roles. Every company needs good BDRs. And that's the part to me that I just love. If you want to create a path, if you put in the extra time and the effort, it's going to open wide up for you.
That's a great point. And to that point, a lot of companies have done a great job at letting that be known, and sales leadership and in leadership in general is like, hey, this role is what you make of it. If you want to be sort of like the CEO of your own little company here by prospecting, that's on you. You can take however much you want. But there are some companies that don't do that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
Necessarily. And maybe management maybe management isn't fully invested in the SDR function like they should be to allow reps to grow within the role and really carve out those pathways for themselves. So sort of the second part of my question, and Keith, I'll let you continue here, but what can leadership teams do to prepare reps for upward mobility, not just maybe into an AE position, but like you both alluded to previously, maybe into marketing or into sales leadership or wherever they want to go?
Yeah. Or even sales enablement, right? There's so many opportunities there.
Endless.
And it's a really fair question. And I don't think the answer is all that attractive. I think that most sales organizations are kind of reeling from the last 18 months. I mean, let's face it, everybody had projections a year and a half ago that for the most part, you either got super busy because you were lucky you sold Zoom, or you dried up, right? And you didn't know where your buyers were. And now it's 2021. The buying process we know is changed the sales process. So I think what we're talking about here is the idea that there's so much chaos going on. And I mean that in a constructive way. Sales leaders are often tasked with closing deals. They're not tasked with developing their sales reps. And that's because, predominantly speaking, there were enough sales reps out there that they could just churn and burn. And now we see that what the COVID experience has done for a lot of sales organizations, especially the ones that we're talking to, is it's forced them to reshuffle their sales process. They've got to get technology, and you've got technology, you got process, and you have people, right? So all the technology in the world means that you have to change your process. If you're adding tech, you're changing process. And if you're changing process, you have to teach your people. And so I think it's opening up this reality of, maybe we haven't been teaching our SDRs or BDRs like we could have been, because here we are. We have to teach them what to do with these new tools. So I see them coming out of the shadow a little bit, but for the most part, I still think that it's up to the BDR to recognize, you know what, I'm selling HR tech. So maybe what I should do is start reading up on HR trends and start getting the information that sales reps, like I always invited any SDR or BDR that got me an appointment, had full range to sit on every call throughout the entire sales process. Why? Because most of them wanted to see what was on the other side of the tunnel. And two, because it gave them the perspective of what my prospects are talking about. And I always said, don't talk about, I'm like the worst sales rep to work with if you're an SDR, because I would be in all their meetings. And then when we walk out, I'd be like, don't do anything they just said. If you talk at all about our product, I'm gonna trade you out. Talk about the trends, talk about the concepts that keep them up at night, not what keeps our marketing team up at night. So, I know I'm going a little bit back and forth here, but I think for leadership teams, they have to encourage giving their SDRs and their BDRs full range to get creative, to learn. And again, that starts with the rep actually asking to learn more.
Yeah. Sam, you're in sales leadership. What do you think about that?
So it's been a couple of different variations through different sales reps coming on, but right now I just onboarded a BDR team since last time we spoke, which has been great for me because I had a new style of kind of onboarding, which is fun. But I think it's a really big thing to make sure that they're ready to go before they hit the phones. So making sure that the first couple of weeks is learning the product through and through, and not only the product itself, but the value propositions behind it, and meeting with the sales team, and also having the sales team pitch them in their own sense. So becoming one-on-one with your sales reps to truly understand your territory, what's going on in it, and kind of having that relationship building with your own rep to make sure that you understand their language, what they hit upon in their value proposition, and what they are able to sell, and kind of help them through your eyes, because you're brand new to the product, what's missing. Because when you hit a decision maker, sometimes they can't see with fresh eyes. So having those fresh eyes on it that kind of know the product has really helped our sales rep develop as well. And then it's on the manager to have a 30, 60, 90 plan and actually stick to it, and not being like, okay, here's the 30, 60, 90, and then 30-day comes up, and making sure that your reps keep you also accountable with it, because there'll be days where you're like, oh my gosh, you've been here for 30 days. That's wild. Okay, what do we have to do today? So it's just making sure that like you keep your managers, because they're managing a lot of people and they also have jobs outside of just the BDR development. So just making sure that you're keeping your managers honest. And then what I kind of like to do is do a weekly feeler. So on the one-on-ones, I have like a whiteboard. We're virtual, but it's a whiteboard that I put up. I ask how their week is, and they give me an emoji, and they say like, oh, this is how my week's going. And then right off the bat, I ask 3 things they did well last week and 3 things they want to work on. And then we'll go to the work-ons. Then we'll outline how they're going to work on it throughout the week, and we'll make them say it over and over again. We'll go over calls, we'll pause, we'll do a little call scripting, we'll go over objections that they might have missed, and then we'll do their best call at the end of the call. And we'll see what they did well, what they want to work on for next time, and what are their takeaways, so that they understand and they're developing themselves. And then when they get to that level where the sales rep is like pushing me like, hey, this person needs to be closing, they're actually getting me demo after demo, or the team is meeting with them, I think they'd be great for the marketing department, kind of finding that flow to help them go into the next position. So if they want to go on to an APE position, maybe give them a small territory or have them take on some inbounds, then having the rep handhold them kind of through the demo process and also the sales process, and then kind of going from there. If they want to go on the marketing side, take on a little marketing campaign, work with the marketing flow, or implementation, do a little implementation flow, but just that's on the manager to help them guide to the next position, so that when they go to the next one, they don't have to start from day one, but they're easing into it. But yeah.
I like that. It's tough. Yeah, Keith, go ahead.
There's something worth saying here. I can imagine the Zoom room full of BDRs wondering whether or not we're being realistic to them. And I kind of want to like call something out here. I know a bunch of sales reps that suck to work with. They're grumpy. They've got their habits. They have their success. And for the better part, for better or worse, their success didn't include BDRs. Those sales reps exist. And so I always, I was the sales rep who was always willing to mentor any BDR that had any question, whether or not they were assigned to me or not. And I don't know about you guys, but I could, within 12 months, I could have 3 different BDRs. It's just the way that process sometimes works. What I often think about is how hard it might be for a 23-year-old to come into a company that's literally trying to scale, which means it's not moving at the standard business pace. To be, I come from software, so as a software SDR, BDR, there's an incredible amount of moving pieces that are just flying by. So it's not easy to just be able to pull this stuff off. It takes patience, it takes self-awareness, it takes development, not just as a professional, but as a person. And I kind of tie that into the benefit of being inside of a sales organization. There are plenty of people that are in accounting and customer service that they're not really driven by any true improvement. They just come in, they do their job, and they do a good job, and then they leave. That's usually not the case. So from the jump street, I think it's a good habit for people coming in as newbies, as BDRs, to consider self-development in addition to all these other components that maybe you have a good sales leader, maybe you have a good BDR leader, maybe you've got bad ones, but none of them can keep you from developing the kind of things that help you as an individual.
Yeah. And I think that's like mindset at its core, right? Like knowing that all around you, you've got variable after variable that could impact something about your day. Like you could be having the greatest day ever, but bang, something comes in and tells you like, oh, you did a bad job, or you're trying to do something and, oh, there's a blockade at your company. You can't actually do that. All of that goes away technically if you know that the best thing that you control is your own development. And part of that is making sure that, and Keith, you alluded to this before, is that you need to be resourceful to be a resource. So you don't want to tell someone about features and benefits and blah, blah, blah when you're pitching somebody something. They want to know what you can do to help them stop thinking about things, right?
Yep.
Classic. You want to help them alleviate any of those issues. So a lot of that is involving you actually helping them solve issues and challenges versus shoving features and benefits down their throat. That's
Right.
the classic salesperson who shows up, does their job, maybe does it well, and then bounces and goes to a new company. So we talked about a few resources before. Where do you see these reps who are really engaged in self-development and growing within the role going to get the resources they need to make those next steps?
Well, yeah,
Sam, I know you touched on a couple as well, so we can dive back in.
Yeah. I think the short, I mean, I don't know if now's the time for short answers, right? But I think the truth of the matter is that it's literally, well, I used to say down the hallway, but now that we're all virtual from that part, it's right in your sales brothers and sisters. I mean, the truth is that if you're in BDR, you're there because you most likely want to become in sales. So, I used to, like, I still do this to people I meet with. What books are you reading? What influencer are you following? Are you waking up an extra hour early? I know in your early 20s, I'm not going to pretend I wanted to, but at least block out a little bit of time to read about what's going on. And then the next part, so it's your own industry, it's your own craft. And then it's your company's telling you, our key industry verticals are manufacturing, healthcare, and professional services. Do you have the acumen to speak to somebody inside of those verticals that might be senior level? And I know this is maybe blocking and tackling type stuff, but at the end of the day, you're only going to get so much inside your 9-to-5 job. Sales isn't 9 to 5 in any capacity. Every sales professional I've ever met is always thinking about sales, and it's a blessing and a curse, right? But that speaks to, what do you want to think about when you're thinking about sales? Do you want to think about the positive things you could make happen, or do you want to pretend you're a victim and you're dealing with some sort of, woe is me, my marketing team sucks, or my manager missed my 30-day, my 60-day review. I don't know what to do next, right?
Yeah. I think I'm going to bring you back to what Keith's been saying. It's your mindset. If you don't want to wake up at 6:30 a.m. to read a little news break article or look on LinkedIn to see what's going on in your industry, I'm in healthcare. So we have Gartner, we have Definitive Healthcare. That should be your first go-to in the morning to see what's going on in healthcare news and to understand kind of what's going on in the industry, who bought who this week, what medical group is buying what medical group, what communication company is buying what communication company. You need to know. And if you don't want to know, then you're just going to be a C player that's hitting dials and not understanding what you're doing there. And you're just going to hit your 60 calls a day. You're going to even out, be an And honestly, some managers need those reps that hit their 8 demos a month instead of their 10, and they're just going to glide by month to month, quarter to quarter, and they're not going to, I hope they don't by seniority, but they're not going to achieve those end sales goals where they're true AEs or true sales leaders, and they're just making an impact. So if you want to wake up at 9 a.m. and hit your morning stand up at 9:01, look at your call list and have no strategy behind who you're calling or why you're calling for that day, not setting up your cadences or your sequences to be your benefit, but just calling, and hopefully they don't pick up this time because you're not in the mood to do a prep, then you're not going to do well. You should take 5 minutes out of your day and do a pre-call prep. You could do it with your manager or with someone within your org. Find a buddy, find one of your BDRs that you sit next with, and you guys go over your call script one-on-one. You guys help each other out. You say, I'm calling the East Coast today. I know that this health organization was just signed. I'm going to use them as a reference. Marketing just told me that this white paper just went out. I'm going to send it out to this customer, this customer, this customer. It's interacting, finding out what tools are available to you and using them, and not just saying you're going to use them. Because I know a lot of reps will say, I'm going to be doing this today, and then they don't act on it. And you have to put numbers in front of you and goals. So when you start off, have a call goal. I want to reach 5 decision makers today. And you tally off and you make those dials until you hit those 5 decision makers. And then when you get a little better, I want to do a demo a week. I want to do 5 demos a day, depending on your quota. But making sure you have those small little goals and set them for you and making them realistic is great. So hope this helps.
That's awesome. No, it's I don't know how that wouldn't help somebody. It's something that, like, when you look at the role, it can be very complicated or it can be very easy. And if you want to make it easy, think about it like that. Small goals that you can set for yourself to hit.
I've had some reps that come in, and like, we've used SalesLoft as a sales enablement tool, and they just put in so many leads to see, because they get so bored of their leads because they don't get to the 7th or 8th, and they're just like, they're not answering. But just let you guys know on this call, they don't answer till the 8th or 9th time. So keep calling. Please keep calling. I'm telling you, it will work. There's mastery behind this craft. Just make sure you're not giving up. And if you're backfilling, then you're not doing those sequences that people pay millions of dollars to figure out. So just keep calling, smile and dial. I'm telling you, it works.
It does work. And I think that there's, I think what you were alluding to there with technology is the science of the role. And here's where I enjoy I enjoy sales. Like, I'm a creative. I love the arts component of the science, right? And again, I know that I might sound like a broken record, but I do a lot of work as a business consultant as well. And what I can tell you absolutely, that if you're stressed, you cannot be creative. It's just simply how our human brains work. And so this notion of being a little bit outside of the box, having fun with it, like doing the cadences should be the thing that you have a set goal for, like in a couple hours. And then if you do it efficiently, and most companies are moving to technology, they're not doing that, right? You can be efficient, and then you could relax, and you could start thinking about some conversations, tying that into the kind of reality that your prospects are trying to find. Because everybody wants to laugh. I mean, you asked us a joke right away, right? Like, the idea of having an icebreaker or something that's relaxing is universal in its attraction. So if you can maintain creativity while you're digging and moving at a hard, fast pace, and again, that's by taking ownership of your own activities, you'll be able to have fun and work hard.
Yeah, I think, I mean, personally, I know that when I was an SDR, that was when I was the most successful, I could be creative and I could pull in like hobbies or interests from outside of work into work by doing a bit of research on, the person that I'm reaching out to. Easy enough to see if they like, the same hobbies that I do. I competitively play Pokemon for a very long time. If I see somebody who is in that scene, it's so easy for me to use that as a lead into a conversation, and I'm having fun doing it. And it's way easier to get into the flow of having conversations like that versus like, oh, here's another VP that I have to cold call because he's one of 30 on a list today. That's I think Sam, you mentioned it in a different podcast, but those aren't SDRs, those are order takers, right? Like those are people who are just there to get the job done, not to have fun doing it, to actually learn something and grow and be creative with it.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Keith, I don't know if you wanted to say something. Sorry, you were going to jump in. Go for it, man.
Yeah, I can't shut it off now. It's your fault. You know, to think about it, also think about it long term. Are you going to be an SDR for life? I mean, I wouldn't be, right? Most BDRs, SDRs move. Consider where you're going, whether it be marketing, sales enablement, or sales. You're never going to have enough resources handed to you. You're never going to have enough time to get what always needs to be done. That's just getting acclimated to the work world, right? So recognize that the habits that you build in your entry, I don't want to say entry level, because again, it's the most challenging component of a sales organization. But knowing that if you can put in the effort to start building habits, those habits you will carry the rest of your career, and most likely they will help you accelerate your career. I think a lot of SDRs and BDRs or younger sales reps wait 5-10 years to consider the idea of building right habits because they are where they are in their lives and their career, but no time like the present to start doing that.
You did kind of just segue almost perfectly into the question that I was going to ask. You're in my head at this point, which is good. But the idea that like a lot of SDRs don't want to be SDRs forever, and they often think how fast can I get out of this role? It's a grind. Everyone knows that the SDR role is difficult, and it's almost easier to be an AE with just the level of like activity that you have to put in and the whole situation. But it can be dangerous to move quickly, right? Like you said, if you don't build those habits or those foundational skills, then you're setting up on top of something that isn't stable for your next position. So I don't know if Keith, you already talked about it. So Sam, if you had any ideas around like if someone's trying to move up quickly in a role, what would you sort of advise them to
I got it. Advise them to
do instead, or how would you or give them the pathway that they need to? That's classic. How would you give them the pathway that they need to make sure that they grow sustainably instead of just like a rocket ship into the next role without any real foundation?
Yeah, any SDR managers that are on here, I really recommend that you do not tell your SDRs that they're going to be in another position in 6 months. They really need to earn it. You need to make sure that they have the cold calling skills to be able to talk about closing a deal, because closing and starting a conversation are two totally different skills that some people just don't have. And then also, if you are an SDR, ask your manager to see other departments, because when you go into these sales roles, some of the time you don't understand that there's a whole other organization that's out there. For myself, I came from a management position, so I wanted to be a manager. I had the opportunity to have an excellent manager. I had an excellent mentor, like I said, he's on the call right now, who have helped me do the skills. And actually, I went into a leadership development program to learn those skills to become a leader, because that's what I wanted to be. Read some leadership books, went to the next level. But in order to set yourself up for success, reach out to, if you have a bad AE, reach out to a good AE and have those one-on-one sessions with them to make sure that you can develop the closing role, have an understanding of the closing process, look at if you use PandaDocs or Salesforce quote book, understand like how that works, because that's going to be brand new to you when you go into that role. So if you develop those skills when you go into it, you'll understand it. Also learning the analytic tool and the sales dashboards to kind of understand how to use that to your advantage. See what your your numbers are. Always know your KPIs. Know how many cold calls it takes you to book a demo. So if it takes you 98 calls to book a demo, know that. Be able to look at your what your ratio for talking to listening, because you have to be a very good listener when you become a closer, because they're going to tell you a lot of information on those calls. And sometimes there's little glitches like AJ's having today, and you're not going to be able to remember it. So just make sure you're always listening and you practice that. Let's get storytellings from different individuals and start writing it down and repeating it to other people. But just develop little hindsight sales goals, and like Keith said, always be reading and always be learning. There are so many sales books, and then find your voice. AJ has a personality where he could talk about Pokemon and pitch to someone. I can never do that. I would get red faced and get embarrassed. I had a sales rep that every time he called, he said, I would know, he would say, I know this is somewhere between jury duty and going to a funeral, but can I get 30 seconds of your time? And he was able to say that. I couldn't even repeat it. And I've heard it 1,000 times when I was listening to him. So it's making sure that you have your own voice, your own pitch, your own style, work on it, look at yourself in your mirror while doing it, record yourself, do it in front of your spouses. Another thing I like to do is to call my grandma with any new process that we're going through, or I pitch to her, and if she doesn't understand it, I need to start over. So just letting you know,
amazing.
I was going through before this, but I had like all my pitches before I started, and I kept them because I love looking at them, and I'm like, oh, baby Sam. This is 3 minutes long.
Right.
I thought I was going to have that. So it's just keep doing it, write down, and then that's it. But,
and AJ, I wanted to just compliment you on how you only freeze when you're talking. I think that
it's uncanny.
That's a good skill set, right? And so let's go a little bit macro here, right? I have the pleasure of being an associate with a group called Integral Performance, and this is for the lack to use as few words as possible. Think about global experts that come in and take a $250 million company and turn them into $1 billion in 18 months. They're working with CEOs, they're working with board of directors, and the thing that they work on, believe it or not, isn't process, it's mindset, right? And so going back to what we've been talking about here, authenticity is a very valuable lesson and a very valuable skill set. And maybe when you're younger, you don't know your true authenticity, but I encourage you to go seek it out, right? And then there's this other idea of, how do I get out of an SDR role? You could quit. There's a billion ways you could get out of an SDR role. Where do you want to go? And what's your commitment to where you want to go? Because listen, you could get out of an SDR role, go right before HR takes your computer, you could go online and apply for 500 other BDR roles and probably get hired. But does that serve you if what you don't want to do is be an SDR or BDR? You want to be able to recognize, and Sam, the books thing is one thing, but personally for me, I started to accelerate my career path when I started using this thing. I don't know if you guys have caught on to YouTube. Like, you can literally type in, what's the best way to get out of a SDR role? And you will find influencers, and you will find people that not only have been where you are, but they got out of it. And you can learn. Listen to 10 of them. You can, if I have 10 minutes of time, I find a 10-minute video. If I have 5 minutes of time, I find a 5-minute video, or I pause it and listen to it. What I'm not doing is watching the news. What I'm not doing is worrying about bullshit that has nothing to do with what I want, right? And so when you do this, that helps you create what's called a default future. And you would be surprised how many people don't recognize that their default future is a shitty scenario. They've spent so much time not, you get into sales role. Oh, how's the quarter looking? Kind of sucks. So how's your numbers looking? You start to envision, maybe even subconsciously, you envision a shitty outcome, a shitty manager review. And with that, you're really programming your behavior to go in that direction. So think about and spend time thinking about what that default, what you want out of your future holistically to be like. And then you'll notice that your mindset and the people you surround yourself with, one day you'll look around and all of them are helping you. And you can't lose when that happens.
Love that. I did want to, you went macro, I want to go a little micro. And we actually had a question from the audience. And I think this speaks to a lot of what we talked about and trying to put it in terms that we can all understand and grasp tangibly. But the skills, specific sales skills that SDRs need that are critically important to succeed in the role. We talked a lot about mindset. Pretty loaded term. There's a lot to do with that. Skill wise, when you have that mindset, the one of growth and creativity and what we've been talking about, how does that like represent skill wise in an SDR?
Sam, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I really think that all SDRs should be curious. I think that when you have an interview as an SDR manager, you should make sure that they're a curious little questioner, because if they don't like asking questions, they're not going to like being a BDR. Their main goal is to ask questions and get answers and have the decision maker fill in the blank. They should also have, obviously they're not going to be passionate about your project. I mean, your product when you're hiring them. So have them tell you a passion product that they have, because they're going to need to be passionate about your project, about your product. I like to listen to stories and how they do storytelling, because I think storytelling is a huge asset that BDRs have, and to see if they can keep me engaged in a conversation based off their storytelling. And then I really do like a competitive spirit, because I really think that when you're sitting next to someone, you're going to need to be competitive. So I like hosting power hours, where you do an hour call block, and the person that has the most calls in the most hour, or the most connections in that hour, they get to leave an hour early on Friday. So just keeping that competitive spirit and making sure they're good. So always be curious, be passionate, and be competitive.
Yeah. And I'll add to that, listen like you have no mouth. Listen like, and here's the great part. I promise you, I didn't listen as well as I do now when I was in my 20s. It's a learning process, but I also didn't have AJ putting together this webinar to teach me the value of listening, right? If you take the skill set of listening and you apply it to your mother or your girlfriend or your husband or whatever, to everyone, and you start becoming more aware that, oh, you know what, I'm not listening, I'm actually thinking about what I want to say, you will see your sales results start to scale in success, because that is the key thing. People often poke fun at salespeople because they're always talking. The really good ones, they're not talking at all. They're listening, right? And then the next part to that is, and this is a word that candidly I think got way overplayed in 2020, and that's be empathetic. Recognize you're a competitor. Recognize that you want to develop your sales capabilities and your acumen, and that you want to take on a role or a career that you're excited for. The person that's on the other side of the phone, who probably needs your product or service, they're stressed, they're underwater. 50% of marriages out there end in divorce. So half the time, the person you're talking to might be in a bad marriage. So bring patience and understanding to your energy, and I think you'll see a lot more success come sooner. What else, AJ?
Wow. A+, internet, A+. Let's wrap this up with some final thoughts from the two of you in terms of, we've talked a lot about mindset. We've talked a lot about like what individuals and companies can do to make sure that their sales development function is successful. Sam, I'll start with you. If you could sum it up in one thought, phrase, idea, one final thing to leave, what is that thing to make sure that as an SDR, you can see success?
One sentence. Okay.
It doesn't have to be one sentence. It could be a thought, a phrase.
I think that you need to go into this role having an understanding that you're not always going to be here forever, but you need to make it so you can get out of that seat. So if you do not take the opportunity to grow and learn, you will never move in this position. And if you do, know that you didn't earn it. And I, as a individual, I can't live or do something that I don't earn. So I want to make sure that I'm developing the skills and being the best in the room. So I want to do that for myself. So if you have that mindset that you are here to succeed and I deserve to be here and I deserve to be in this room, you're going to do so much better in your future.
Yeah, I agree, Samantha. And I'll also say it's a little bit out there, I'll admit, but it kind of works. And the idea here is that business is a game. Sales is a game, right? It's a real game, but we're playing it. And if you're playing the game correctly, any game, you're going to be having fun while you play. So figure out what you enjoy about it and design your process so that you can have fun. You know, musicians make music sound great all the time, but they spend hours, if not years, working on the art of playing. And good salespeople and good BDRs and good leaders, they can handle all the stress because they play with it. And I think that, you know, not to take yourself too serious, not to take the quota too serious, and realize that if you can find a way to play with that stress, you'll be able to accomplish whatever you need.
I love that.
Or get help from somebody who has.
Yeah, ask for help.
Yeah, that's the third answer to all of this.
Right.
Love it. Awesome. Well, let's open it up. I want to see if anyone in the audience has any questions for you too. I think that was a great sort of encompassment of, that's a word, encompassment of what it takes to succeed as an SDR, to really think about those next steps and what it takes to move up and out of the role. I know we had a couple of questions actually come in before the event. Alex, I'll let you take it away if you want to start asking some stuff. And then I encourage anyone in the audience, if you had a question that popped up during the presentation that you want to ask, go ahead and type it into the chat and we'll make sure to get Keith and Sam to answer.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, AJ. Should I turn my camera on or should I be mysterious in the background?
You do whatever makes you comfortable.
I'll stay back here. Nobody needs to see this face. Sorry. So the first question that came in previous sort of lays out a scenario, kind of a micro level mindset question. So say you have a couple of different scripts that you're testing out. Would you advise, in the beginning of each call, making a split-second decision based on how the prospect picks up the phone and their mood, which script to use? Or would you maybe stick to one for a while and get used to it? Or would that be maybe detrimental? Could that be sort of come off as robotic? What are you guys' thoughts on sort of that micro level mindset when it comes to, in the call, on the call, making the right decisions there?
Do you want to take it, Keith, or do you want me to take it?
You can go. You go first.
Okay, sure. So I actually can't read a script. So I think it's just dependent on the person. I have to have bullet points. If I read off a script, I sound very robotic and unauthentic. And I really had a rough time at first, because when I started as a BDR, we had a full script handed to us and I could not read it. Me and my friend, we sat back to back in this chair and we had it written on the window. And I would turn around and try and read it and it would come off just horrible. So I threw it all away and I just did bullet points. I would just have your propositions. I would have 5 key points that you can read off of if that's your style. If you are someone that needs to have it scripted, that's up to you. I just don't think it's an authentic voice. If it's something that your manager is making you have, maybe talk to them about making it in your own voice and your own style. But you're going to have some people that aren't ready for that cold call and just have that in the back of your mind as a reminder. So sometimes those scripts won't work.
Yeah, and here's where I do that. I can't help it. I'm a sales guy, never did the SDR thing, but I've been my own lead gen person, right? And nobody cares what you think, right? Like the question that's being asked is, what script should I have? How about you throw away the script and read an article that the person you're trying to call into most likely would want to read. And then you could give them something that says, hey, listen, I wanted to send you an article about enter stress point in their industry. I wasn't sure if you're into reading. Is this a problem of yours? Or is there something else that's on your mind these days? You don't have to study a script. You just have to ask them if it's okay that you give them something of value. And I think with all of the push of marketing and product and BANT and all of this stuff, listen, the real world out here is that buyers have more control now than ever over sales processes. And they are exclusively letting in only the people that they think are adding them value to them. So if you don't have anything of value, don't say anything. Just ask what their value is, or do the research to identify and speak in their terms. And I know that like marketing people don't like me saying that, right? But at the end of the day, buyers are going to buy because they want to buy, not because you pushed them in that direction.
As someone in marketing, I do appreciate that you said that, because even though it's my job to create, it's education versus even empathy, like what you were talking about before. Previously, buyers like listened to sellers because they needed to be educated on a possible solution. Now they know what the solutions are, and it's like you said, up to them to sort of bring in who they think is going to help them solve it. So I would agree. I think that if you go into each call understanding the persona and what really matters to them, that's better off fully scripted conversation.
I can actually bring up something we were bringing up the 15 minutes before the call, is that we have all these toolkits right now that salespeople are almost creepy when it comes to the knowledge that you can gather of someone before you make the call. You can go to if you're doing social selling, you can go to their LinkedIn page, their Facebook page, their Instagram. You can find their whole buyer persona based off their personality. You can go to their website. You can see what tools they have on their website. I don't know what toolkits you have available, but you can see their intent signals through a lot of tools that a lot of companies are utilizing. I know that Einstein on Salesforce has that whole script that would work for their persona based off of their email interactions with them. We talked about how some calls, if you have one of your calls recorded, you can actually see how you could do your tonality to reach out to this individual. So with having a script, I'm going to agree with Keith, throw it away, because every conversation is different. I've never read anything that went word for word. I can tell you right now, we have a script from this webinar and we did not hit any of it. So like, it's just, you have to go off feeling and you have to have a conversation, because that's what you're having. You're having conversations, you're asking questions, and you have no idea how that person's going to answer on the other end.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's a final thought, and it's probably good I didn't say it earlier, but if you work, you're out of college, or you had some sort of transition job, you want to get into sales, and now you are some sort of business development representative. If you think that the company you're with isn't doing enough to train you, go find one that does. I promise you, I'm talking to sales leaders, sales execs, sales enablers all over the world every day of the week. They are looking to make their BDRs and their SDRs better. If your organization isn't, the talent marketplace across the globe is to the advantage of every single worker today. It doesn't matter who you are. If you don't like who you're working with, then do the research, find a company that you could support, right, Sam? Get a little bit passionate about what you can offer and go work for them. It'll make your life a whole lot easier, and it'll probably increase your paycheck as well. How's that for an idea, right?
I love that. Alex, what else do we got? Any other questions you want to ask?
Yeah, next question we got here. I think we have time for at least one more. Focusing on one thing that I don't think we had a chance to touch on yet, and that's handling, remote and hybrid teams, coming out and during the pandemic. So focusing on that mindset and that sort of growth mindset, we'll keep it kind of broad and I'll let you guys take it where you want. But how did you either sort of change your strategies as far as like allowing your reps to grow and continue to develop while in this sort of new remote or hybrid environment? And are there any sort of disadvantages or challenges that came up that you didn't sort of see that you had to figure out how to overcome?
A ton. I've had people who have never used a Mac before, and I couldn't sit down physically with them to show them how to use a Mac. Being in office as a manager is just entirely easier when it comes to just learning tools and being there. I would say from a manager perspective, when you're onboarding, learn the tools as if you have never used them before, because you might have an individual that has never seen it or used a mouse pad that goes the opposite way that they've been using their entire life. You need to realize that a lot of these individuals that are coming into this role, we've said it a couple times, that they're new to this style of work. They're new to being sales reps. They're new to sales tools. So just making sure you do a walkthrough of what's going to be going on in their first onboarding process or during their onboarding process is really critical, so you don't have any hiccups when they're joining. And make videos. I highly recommend it. Make videos and also have a little script next to it of how to do every single step for their process. It helps with onboarding. But Keith, do you have anything else?
Yeah, not too much. I don't really have much experience managing BDRs, but what I can say is that it's a person, it's a people thing, right? If you're a manager, take 30 minutes and think about all of the challenges that somebody that reports to you might have, and then be completely vulnerable in discussing them and make it a real thing, because everyone is in a new world right now. And if you really want to get the most out of your BDRs, well, then keep them excited about being one of your BDRs. And most people will do that if they know that the person who's managing them sincerely demonstrates action towards helping them.
I really recommend morning stand-ups too, just so you guys can connect and have luncheons once a week just for water cooler chat, because they don't have that option. Some of these individuals, it's their first job, so they didn't have that little coffee area. So you can there's some free tools, and you can use Donut, where you can meet different people within the organization to kind of have that coffee conversation. So they meet outside of this little realm of the individuals that they see every day. But
Yeah.
making them all inclusive and feel included is great.
Yeah, I think just to cap, I don't know if cap is the right word, but to both of your points, it's if you want to scale remotely, it's you just think about it like they're humans and you're a human, and you want to make sure that they're comfortable in the role. And the best way to do that is to be vulnerable and think about them as more than just a number. They're another person who's looking to succeed. They have goals and challenges. So how do you tap into that as a manager? Is it through stand-up meetings that are not maybe dedicated towards pipeline numbers, or one-on-one career development meetings? So a lot of things that you can do to just make them feel like a person instead of just a number on their team that has a goal that they have to hit.
Right. Because they are a person on the team that has a goal to hit. So we have to do the work, right? So why not do the work and have more fun and be more empathetic and help people along the way? Try it on.
Have your cake and eat it too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour here. I don't know, Alex, if you had any last questions. You said this was the last one. I don't know. I just, if you had any more, if you had a last thought, you're just in the background here if you wanted to say something.
Oh, as far as last thoughts, I was about to say we did get one more question in the chat if we have time to get to it.
Oh, snap.
So I'll just read it live here. I didn't even see what it said, but so I guess this is more, I believe, Nathan, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you off this, you're looking at sort of pitching on LinkedIn and things like that. And specifically using the connection request or reaching out to someone unconnected through InMail. Does using that message option when you go to connect with a prospect to request that, does that come off as disrespectful? So I guess this sort of hits a different side of mindset where it comes to how you're feeling about your own outreach, right? So I guess you guys could probably speak anecdotally when you get these either emails or message requests from people you don't know who are reaching out, and it's a little transparent, they're probably pitching you something. How do you guys take those, and are those strategies that you use on your own then as well?
So
Okay.
yeah, I'll swing at that one. So first and foremost, the art of LinkedIn is not pitching. The art of LinkedIn is connecting. And from there, you develop some sort of give. Again, if you want to think and be like a salesperson, you have to give and give and give and make them like you. And then because they like you, they think of you when the problem starts to really bother them. So don't pitch, just connect. And you could connect by bringing value. Hey, I have someone in my network that you might want to connect with. I know I'm not in your network, but I think, what can we connect? And do you think this is a good idea? I mean, more people are going to respond to that than I have a product, you could use it because your product and your process isn't that good right now, right?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Connect, don't pitch in your emails. I will say that once you have a connection and you are utilizing your LinkedIn in a way of putting up posts or just articles about, or white papers about your individual company, you can utilize marketing tools. So say they have a vote that's going on, you can reach out to individuals like, hey, I would love your opinion. I see that you're, for me, like I see you're a practice manager of gastroenterology clinic. We'd love to hear your opinion, but do not pitch them on the product.
And don't pitch them the next time either.
Yeah.
And don't pitch them the next time after that either.
InMail, yeah, just keep it casual when it comes to
LinkedIn. Right.
Like their post, engage, communicate, but don't pitch.
Yeah, build that relationship. Couldn't agree more.
And I think there's a couple videos out there that teaches you how to do that,
Mhm.
right?
Oh yeah, YouTube is, like you said, full of examples.
Right, right.
Awesome. Well, we are at the top of the hour. We're a minute over, actually. So, Keith and Sam, thank you so much for joining us. Keith, I saw you dropped your LinkedIn in the chat. Sam, if you want to do the same, feel free. If anyone wants to connect with myself, Keith, or Sam, feel free. We are more than happy to continue the conversation offline. Thank you again for coming today, and I hope you learned a thing or two.
Yeah. Thanks, AJ and Alex. Really appreciate the time. Sam, great talking with you.
Everyone.
Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
All right. Cheers.